What is going on with Matthew Judon? We examine whether or not the Patriots should extend their star edge rusher here on Patscast.
Just buzzing, should we give a man more? Judon on the edge, but that injury score coming off that pain.
Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The Patriots and de facto GM Elliott Wolf, whatever his title is these days, have really been extending all of their foundational pieces this offseason, making sure that what was working this past season, not a lot was working, but the guys that were fitting are re-signed and brought back to the team for years to come. And they've spent a lot of money just to make sure they bring back those foundational pieces, so even though they are in a full-on rebuild right now, they have something to build around. But that leaves us with Matthew Judon, who's coming off of a bicep injury, and he's in an interesting contract situation at the moment. Has just 1 year left on his current contract worth $7.5 million in 2024, and he's been very public about how he wants to stay in New England, how he's seeking a new deal, and he's been saying that for quite some time, and he's still been a pretty good teammate along the way. Although he's seeking a new deal, he's said he won't stage a hold-in during training camp this summer, which is good. He's going to be out there no matter what, whether or not Judon and the Patriots reach an agreement, but there have been extension talks, and as of right now, nothing has happened. And a lot of people think, like, okay, this is inevitable. Judon, the Patriots, this is the next major deal in the NFL. It's only a matter of time before it happens. They've re-signed all these other guys that became free agents or were going to become free agents next year, signed them to long-term deals, and made sure that they have those foundational pieces for years to come. However, it's a little bit more complicated when it comes to Matt Judon. As I mentioned, he's coming off of a bicep injury, only played 4 games last year, looked pretty good those 4 games, but missed 3/4 of the season, and the Patriots defense just kept rolling without him. Yes, I know, they were not a good team. They won 4 games, but the defense was not the reason. They lost Matthew Judon, they lost Christian Gonzalez, and they still kept rolling defensively. They just couldn't put points on the board, and I believe 8 of those games that they lost were within a touchdown. So even if you do lose a guy like Matthew Judon, you would still expect this Patriots defense to be pretty good. But under this new Patriots regime led by Elliott Wolf, they've been focusing on securing their top talent. But Judon's a bit different. He's 32 years old. He's not exactly seen as a long-term building block for the future. We don't know how long an edge rusher like him is going to last in the NFL at 32 years old. Yes, he was great in Baltimore. He's been great in New England. He was great last season, 4 sacks in 4 games. You would expect him to be the same Matthew Judon when he comes back. But what's that going to look like 2, 3, 4 seasons down the road if he's still with the Patriots? He's approaching 35, 36. What is the Matthew Judon that you're going to get? And I think that is the main reason, aside from the injury that he's recovering from, the Patriots haven't signed him to a long-term deal quite yet. And if they want to, they can, right? Like, the Patriots have more future salary cap space to work with than any other team in the NFL. They have more salary cap space to work with heading into this coming season than any other team in the NFL, but they've also extended all these foundational pieces that are going to chew up some of that space down the road. Now, they still have plenty of room. If they want to pay Matthew Judon $10 to $15 million a year, I think that's too much. They could, but I think they're saving room in case they want to go after, let's say, one of these big-name receivers that I've been floating out on the podcast for a while. Brandon Ayuk, not happy with his situation in San Francisco. Patriots could make a big trade for him, pay him top dollar, $30+ million a year, sign him to a contract extension, they're off and running. Similar situation in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb. He wants to be the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Cowboys have a lot of cap space they've chewed up. Not sure they're going to be able to bring him back after this season. Maybe he's a guy Patriots could explore trading for. And look, you're willing to pay $23 million a year for a guy like Calvin Ridley. I sure as hell would pay $32 million a year for a guy like CeeDee Lamb, or a little bit less for Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be a number 1 receiver for years to come, a guy the Patriots really haven't had since Randy Moss. So they're saving up some cap space, and that's kind of what factors into this equation. But you have to feel for Matthew Judon at the moment, because he's seeing his Patriots teammates sign all these long-term deals. Started with Hunter Henry, who was a free agent, signed a 3-year deal. Kyle Duggar, a guy who I didn't expect to come back, is coming back on a 4-year deal. Christian Barmore, one of the most important pieces, 4 years. Michael Owena, you had to bring him back because of the offensive line situation. He signed a 3-year deal. Anthony Jennings, 3-year deal. Kendrick Bourne, coming off of an ACL injury, been a good leader in the locker room, in that receiving room. He signed a 3-year deal in spite of the injury. Ramondre Stevenson, I think the Patriots overpaid for him. He's back for 4 years, and they gave him quite a bit of money for a running back. He's a top 10 NFL running back now in terms of dollars that he's going to make on his contract after this year. And then the most recent deal was linebacker Giovanni Tavai, who was signed for 3 years. So Matthew Judon is looking at all of this going, all right, they're all getting paid. What's happening with me? All I've done is pick up like a sack a game while I've been with the Patriots. I've been a leader in the community. I've been a guy who has done nothing but contribute since I've got here. I've been a fan favorite. The red sleeves, this thing that he does when he gets a sack. We all love Matthew Judon. He thinks he's earned it. I think he's earned it to an extent. But coming off of an injury at 32 years old, it leaves some question marks, and you have to understand Elliott Wolf's point of view and why they haven't signed him to a long-term extension. And I think it's worth noting that as of right now, David Andrews and Hunter Henry are the only players with long-term deals who will be in their 30s this coming season, and both are captains that play on nearly every down, which Matthew Judon plays a lot, doesn't play every down, and he's not a captain. So Patriots have a young roster. They want to stay young because they are rebuilding, and a guy like Matthew Judon, you don't really know how he's going to fit in the future, especially if you have him under contract at 35, 36 years old. Now, ideally, Drake May comes in there at some point this season, takes over as the starter, looks to be a future franchise piece, and then when he heads into year 2 and year 3, suddenly he's in the Pro Bowl conversation. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. They're off and running. They have receivers that are working out. They have tight ends. They built up that offensive line, and they've maintained that defense with all these contract extensions. And then having a guy like Matthew Judon is what you need to be a Super Bowl contender. The only issue is they have Matthew Judon right now, and you don't know how exactly that's going to play out. We saw what happened with Mac Jones. Is Drake May going to be a boom? Is he going to be a bust? How is this offense going to play out? How is the defense going to look down the road? Again, they got a young roster, but when you factor in Matthew Judon there, who's probably only going to regress at this point, you have to consider letting him play out his contract, letting him walk, or even potentially trading him at some point. And this is the real issue with Matthew Judon, and I think part of the reason he's being understanding, he's not holding out, he's not holding in, he's going to be a full participant in training camp, and he'll be out there all 16 or 17 games no matter what, is because he doesn't have any leverage. All right, he's made $67 million throughout the course of his career, but he's coming off of a big injury. He's 32 years old. That's not the time to have a bicep injury, is at 32 years old, heading into a contract year. It's basically the worst case scenario for him. So it might be in the Patriots' best interest, it might be in Matthew Judon's best interest to just let this year play out. And that might cost the Patriots more money if they do that. You know, you could potentially right now say, look, Matt, you're 32 years old. We could sign you for 3 to 4 years, have you under contract through 35, 36 years old, but you're going to have to take a team-friendly deal. We don't know what your injuries are going to look like going forward. We don't know if you're going to regress when you get up there in age. So we'll give you a similar contract to what you have right now, $7 to $8 million a year, sign you for a 3-4 year extension, and you can be happy with that. And maybe Matthew Judon would take that because he would have the security. He'd be able to play out the rest of his days in New England and go forward that way. However, if Matthew Judon doesn't agree to terms with the Patriots on a contract extension for the remainder of this offseason, plays out the remainder of the year, puts up 16 sacks, is a Pro Bowl caliber player, all-pro caliber player, he's the same Matthew Judon we're used to seeing out there, then he's going to get a big contract extension. That doesn't mean the Patriots wouldn't re-sign him. I mean, they let guys like Hunter Henry and Kyle Duggar become free agents, and they brought him back and maybe even overspent a little bit for those guys, particularly Michael Owenu, who I think they overspent, particularly if they're going to kick him back to right guard. But Judon doesn't have a ton of leverage at this point, and the Patriots have too many question marks with this star edge rusher who's coming off of an injury. Another thing you have to consider, like I said, Matthew Judon played 4 games last year, looked great, but the defense didn't skip a beat when he was off the field. Maybe you can say, we'll be just fine without him. He's got 1 year on his deal right now. Maybe he's a good trade piece. Now, looking at Taylor Kyle's ex, he was talking about this today, saying, you're not going to get anything better than a third rounder for Matthew Judon on a 1 year deal at this moment in time. I think that's a reach. I think you're probably going to get a 4th to 5th round pick with Matt Judon. But, look, the Patriots are not considered a good team heading into the season. They're the favorite to have the number 1 pick, to have the worst record in the NFL. You add another 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick to next year's draft while they're rebuilding. Drake May has some experience under his belt. That could go a long way, especially if you really think the terms that Matthew Judon wants and the terms that the Patriots want are too far apart. Maybe then you consider trading him. Certainly a team is going to want an edge rusher like that. They're hard to find in today's NFL, and they are big difference makers. I would advise against that. Personally, I think they should let Matthew Judon play the remainder of his deal, and if it costs you more to bring him back next year because he has a great season, do that. But 32 years old, coming off of an injury, this isn't the same as re-signing Kyle Duggar or re-signing Christian Barmore. As I said, David Andrews, Hunter Henry, the only guys with long-term deals right now who are going to be 30-plus next year. And Matthew Judon already 32. It's a tough scenario, but I want to hear from you. Do you think the Patriots should extend Matthew Judon right now? Do you think they should let him play out his contract and maybe pay a little more next year if he does play well, or let him walk if he regresses completely? Or do you think they should trade him right now? What do you think is a worthy return if they do trade Matthew Judon? I'm curious to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button, hit the notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. We're in a bit of a lull right now with the Patriots offseason in between mandatory minicamp and training camp. So less podcasts in these few weeks in between, but we'll certainly be ramping it up as training camp hits and be here to cover any breaking news. If the Patriots make a big swing in a trade for a guy like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, if they extend Matthew Judon, we'll be here to cover it, and we'll certainly be ramping it up once training camp starts, and that basically runs all the way through mandatory minicamp next year when we get another 6-week break with little NFL news. You're not going to want to miss it. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back with more Patriots coverage later on.
Cast is buzzing, should we give the man more? Judon on the edge, but that injury score coming off that pain, fans wondering loud. Pats cast flames up, will he make us proud? Pats cast fakes on the line, give Judon a shine. Pats cast truth in the grind, he's worth more than a dime. Tackles falling down, Judon speed insane. Pats cast is the grit, fighting through the strain. Lines are drawing thin, contract up for grabs. Pats cast in a spin, who's got his back taps? Pats cast fakes on the line, give Judon a shine. Pats cast truth in the grind, he's worth more than a dime. Falling down, Judon speed insane. Pats cast is the grit, fighting through the strain. Lines are drawing thin, contract up for grabs. Pats cast in a spin, who's got his back tap?